you had said before that you weren't aware of how prevailing wages are in fact calculated. Can you tell me, do you have the opinion or have you decided, what's the purpose of prevailing wages in the first place?
Well, it's my understanding that it was brought about years ago to create a fairness in bidding for projects and for the construction of projects.
And how would the fairness be created by establishing a prevailing wage law, in your understanding?
I'm sorry, say again?
How would this fairness be created by establishing a fairness in prevailing wage law?
Well, I've got to be honest, I'm not in favor of prevailing wage law.
Sure, but
So
I'm looking for the origin of the original intent.
I'm definitely not in favor of prevailing wage. But
You've made that clear, but I'm looking for is the origin of the origin of prevailing wage. Why did we start in the state anyway?
I was not here. I'm certainly not a pro of the history of the politics of prevailing wage. I understand that there's a large group of and very diverse group of people who want to protect the prevailing wage. I understand why, and that's why I'm trying to be realistic about a reasonable change to prevailing wage law to fix a problem that very much exists. It's not going to go away. So, you know, I mean, I would be all in favor of doing away with it. But I don't represent an urban district. I understand that's not the best benefit of a lot of urban areas. So, you know, I feel like there needs to be a little bit of compromise on the issue that we have not seen, at least in my opinion. So, and you could probably do a great job of schooling me on the history of prevailing wage, because I certainly don't know it.
I can only tell you what I was told many years ago when I became familiar with prevailing wage, and that was prevailing wage was established to protect our own state, not state workers, workers of the state, but Missouri's own construction workers from migrant labor. I can tell you today, I was a pipe fitter for 26 years. Pipe fitters in St. Louis make about $32 an hour, I think. If you look at some of the contractors down in Arkansas, $9, $10, $12 an hour, right? So you can understand how a job comes open, some of those folks making $9, $10, $12 an hour may indeed migrate to Missouri to take our work, being offered at $16 or $18 or $20 an hour. So as I understand it, a prevailing wage therefore was established to set what our wages are going to be. Therefore, if you want to compete, you're going to pay that same wage to your workers. Then it comes down to the quality of the craftsman. Then it comes down actually to the training involved. Because if we're all making exactly the same wage, who can do it faster? It's usually the fellow who's been trained better and usually has the better quality. So that's my understanding of it. You may have, in fact, a different understanding, but that understanding makes sense. To protect our workers from migrant labor coming from another state, taking our work on public projects and trying to protect those folks from that threat. So I'm a little bit apprehensive to change anything that deals with prevailing wage for exactly that reason, because I want to live in a state that has a lot of jobs. Also want to live in a state that has a decent livable wage for those jobs. Do you share that same opinion?
Oh, absolutely. I would just say two things to that point.
Sure.
One, I have a lot of faith in our locally elected school boards and administrators.
I was a former school member, so do I.
They are very conscientious about their jobs, and they certainly are held accountable for the decisions that they make very regularly. Probably closer than a lot of us who serve in larger areas, because you know they're representing a much smaller district, especially in a rural community. There's not much to talk about, so you talk about anything that is, you know, that's happening. So there's a huge degree of accountability, and they are certainly going to be interested in building a project that is well built. So I would just say that I have a lot of faith in their ability to make those decisions, because they have it. It's in their best interest to have a good project and to build a good project.
Well, you would think so, John, but however, I see folks every single day rushing off to buy products much cheaper, made in places that I prefer not to shop at, and they give up that quality in exchange for a much cheaper rate, saying, we'll kick the can down the road. We can get it done right now. That's all I'm concerned about.
Well,
I see it happen every day.
I would say the second point to that I would make is that right now there is no jobs that's to be had on these projects. Their projects are not being done because they cannot afford the cost to it. So no one's losing any work over any perceived doing the work that needs to be done. So, you know, I understand, and I've heard the whole argument about migrant workers, and I guess that there's certainly a degree of reality you have to deal with in that. But I would also say that there's a lot of people, especially in my area, very rural area, very good construction workers and contractors that do a lot of work all the time that can do just as good of a job for
if they're given the opportunity.
less the cost.
If they're given the opportunity, and that's kind of the catch right there. So, you had said before that you don't know how prevailing wage is calculated. Again, I'll say just my understanding of it is that anyone actually in the construction industry that's performing construction is supposed to, I don't believe it's mandatory, but is encouraged to report those wages to Department of Labor. And it seems like what's happened is, more of the non-union element of the construction industry is not reporting those wages because it's not mandated, but the union element of the construction industry is in fact reporting those wages as it is encouraged, and therefore you get a balance where it's probably a higher wage, because you're looking at the union wage, who's the only one being reported.
Right.
So it seems to me what we can do is probably do a better job of asking for all those wages.
Right.
And we clear the problem and not have more government involved in this thing. Let the people of Missouri actually report it out themselves if they were indeed reporting as they're supposed to be. I would like to get into actually the bill itself, and I'll be real brief, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. You had cited in the bill, that we talk about, the provisions of this section are intended solely to assist school districts in obtaining the maximum values from their tax dollars expended for construction and maintenance of the educational facilities. That struck me a little odd. Why did you include those words, construction and maintenance?
And maintenance, construction for obvious reasons, we want to construct a school. Maintenance, we're actually, in my district, I ran into it in Guernsey last year or the year before. There's a school that was required to pay prevailing wage for the repair to, you know, I don't even remember what it was they were repairing, but by the time they received all of the bids on that particular project, because they had to pay prevailing wage, they ultimately could not even make repairs necessary. And then two, there's another school district in my old legislative district that needed a new roof on it. And it was past the point of repair, they had to have a new school roof. They could not afford to pay the prevailing wage, and this is so incredibly embarrassing for the state of Missouri for schools to be in this position. Because they could not afford to pay the prevailing wage that they had to pay, they literally had to have the patrons of the school district, the people who already pay taxes on their property, come and volunteer their time of evenings to put a new roof on the school. That is beyond ridiculous.
I live in a school inside of charter government, and we volunteer for our schools almost every single day.
Personally, we definitely volunteer for our school district.
So the policy declared that I'm looking at, it says, it is hereby declared to be the policy of the state of Missouri that a wage of millis and prevailing wage rate of wages for work of similar character in the locality in which the work is performed shall be paid to all workers employed on behalf of any public body engaged in public work exclusive of maintenance work. So it's already not allowed for maintenance work. Already prevailing wage is not to be paid for maintenance work. And so I'm wondering why you decided to include the word maintenance within the bill itself when it clearly is already exclusive to prevailing wage law now.
They were required to pay a prevailing wage rate for a maintenance work.
Because they are.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
They are.
So it is a problem.
Any other? Gentlemen, you said that this was about, you estimated you could save as much as double digits on the construction cost. Let's explore that a little bit. How does it save double digits on the construction cost?
In my area, a big industry is, a lot of families are in the family business, multi-generations, the same family that are in contracting and construction. They've been doing it, forever. And those, individuals do not, in that business, especially in rural communities, do not charge the same amount as what some of the contractors and businesses in the large urban areas charge. So for that reason, we contend that we can do a lot of maintenance and probably construction, locally or with, smaller contractors that bid it more equitably for rural areas.
Okay, where's the cost savings coming from? There's less money going to the same project, where's the cost savings coming from?
So if we're able to hire contractors that don't require the same amount, as some of the urban projects, then we'll be able to.
Why are the contractors able to, why are they able to bid less?
Well, I'm not in the construction business.
It's pretty safe to say because they're gonna be paying a lower wage, right?
Oh, well,
I mean, that's where the 10%
certainly, yeah,
savings.
that's the whole point of the bill.
Right, the 10% savings comes out of the paycheck of the construction worker on the project, that's.
Well, then we're able to
correct, right?
utilize, other contractors
That will be paying less. So, I mean, the general argument is about whether the people who are doing the labor on the project, get paid at the current prevailing wage or get paid, significantly less for the project. Right. Okay, so I mean, I think that's an important thing to acknowledge, that we're trying to do it by cutting the salary, the hourly rate of people that work.
I would continue to
construction.
be able to utilize, especially in my more, rural areas, local family businesses that are excluded from the project.
Let's talk about that too, because that's an important point. I mean, if we have compliance with the reporting, then whatever the local people, whatever the local contractors have been reporting for the last years that they've been working, I mean, that's the prevailing wage rate in that county, right?
Well, according to prevailing wage laws, but in reality, it's certainly not.
Okay,
And
so
that's
the problem, right, so the problem is not with the prevailing wage law, the problem is with the reality of how the prevailing wage law is enforced, right? And that's what you're
I
saying.
would say it's completely unfair for our contractors to have to be in a situation where they would have to submit their information, alongside these guys from the more urban areas. If we can, there's a number of things we can do, I think, that I would love to see done to allow our, if we could, I would be fully in favor of making prevailing wage districts smaller or specific to counties. I think that would also be fair.
They are counties now, I mean, that's how it's done now.
Well, no, it's outside of our areas.
No, I mean, if people are reported in a particular county, that sets the prevailing wage rate in that county. And that's.
Yeah, they re-report, but it's a large area.
If nobody in the county reports.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
but we could increase compliance with reporting,
Well,
guidelines.
no, I just reject the notion that we need to mandate everybody to report prevailing wage. I mean, this is just, like I said, I don't agree with prevailing wage to
Okay.
begin with.
Well, I'm not advocating
I certainly
for
don't,
that,
and I
but-
certainly would never agree that we need to mandate more reporting,
Right,
especially to these family businesses.
But you do understand how that then requires the rate not to be set locally in the county, correct?
Right, but I don't think the solution is mandating to,
Okay, and then,
especially the businesses and.
one last thing I'd like to talk about, and then I'll be quiet here. You talked about, you have 19 school districts in your county, so that'd be 19 separate bodies that would have to make this decision. And you talked about how some of them have voted majority for a bonding, but they don't have a super majority. I mean, I'm happy to work with you if you want to reduce that requirement down to majority. Is that something you'd be interested in? I mean, there's other ways to fund the schools, right?
Yes, I mean, certainly there's different ways we can fund that. I would certainly be interested in the discussion. I try to be a realist on a lot of these issues, and I just don't see that something that's moving forward. So I'd rather us be productive on conversations along this line. I think we have a better shot of making some meaningful
Well,
changes.
gentlemen, I'm sure we will have ample opportunity to have plenty of conversations about this year, so thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, to inquire.